All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. We're on chaosradioaustin.org, lrn.fm, anomalyradio.org, and who knows who else. All right, our next guest on the show is Phil Giraldi. He's a regular contributor at Antiwar.com. He's a contributing editor at the American Conservative Magazine. The website there is amconmag.com, the American Conservative Magazine. He's the executive director of the Council for the National Interest as part of the American Conservative Defense Alliance, and is a former CIA and DIA officer. Welcome back to the show, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Scott. How about you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you joining us today. And yeah, it's true, everybody. I interview Phil all the time, but he's breaking news. What am I going to do? It's the most important subject in the whole wide world, I guess, other than relations between America and Russia, the two most hydrogen bomb armed countries. But this is second place, the Iran report. It's at original.antiwar.com/Giraldi, and it's about something called a National Intelligence Estimate, which is put together by something called the National Intelligence Council. Why don't you tell us all about it, Phil?
Well, the National Intelligence Estimate is considered to be the most important document that's produced by the intelligence community. That's all, 16, 17 intelligence agencies that are in the U.S. government sit down together basically and produce this document, which is considered to be their best judgment on a situation that is of national importance, or actually international importance. In this case, what we're talking about is the impending report, which has been impending now for about a year and a half, if not longer, on Iran, and specifically on Iran's nuclear capabilities, its nuclear program. The report has been hung up for a long time because there's been shall we say, a disagreement between the White House and the analysts at CIA and elsewhere that are actually writing the report.
Okay, now wait a minute. This is live in October 2010. This isn't a rerun from 2006, right? Because I remember I actually wrote a blog entry called Release the Iran NIE and Hoaxster Hoaxtra. It was two separate stories, but the first part, Release the Iran NIE, was in reference to a piece that you'd done in the American Conservative Magazine about Dick Cheney suppressing the NIE that wasn't released for more than another year, Phil. It came out the end of November 2007. And but you had a report that said, well, the good guys are trying to tell the truth and the bad guys are trying to stop them.
Well, that's what happened. The previous NIE came out at the end of 2007, and it indeed was subject to a lot of stress by the Bush administration, particularly Cheney, because Cheney wanted the report basically to say that Iran had a nuclear weapons program. The analysts were saying, no, there's no evidence to suggest that, and on the contrary, there's considerable evidence to suggest that they sort of had an exploratory program as of 2003, but that they had terminated it. So that was basically what came out of that NIE. And at that time when it came out, the neoconservatives and other people in the media immediately attacked it and saying, well, it doesn't really show what Iran's intentions are, and Iran basically could have a secret program and so on and so forth. So there was at that time a certain drive to do a revision, to have another NIE, and this started under the Bush administration actually, but really, kind of picked up momentum after Obama came into office and has been getting worked on continuously ever since. But the same problem is surfacing, which is essentially that the analysts are looking at the information, and the information, there's some information that's interpretable one way or another, but basically there is no conclusive information suggesting that Iran either has a nuclear weapons program or has the intention to start one.
Well, so it seems to me like the CIA guys would be really pissed off because all the time, it's not like I believe or have ever believed that the CIA is a fountain of honesty or whatever, but I guess part of their job is telling what they see as the truth to the political bosses who are really responsible, so that they can make whatever horrible decisions they want based on good information or whatever. But every time the politicians tell the CIA, listen, come up with lies for us right now or else, they do it, and then they're the ones who get hung out to dry. And everybody says, oh, yeah, we got bad intelligence. CIA totally screwed us over on Iraq, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The analysts were badly burned on the Iraq NIE that was done in 2002 that eventually led to war in 2003. And then the politicians turned around and said, oh, well, we had bad intelligence. That's why we made the decision to go to war, even though we all know that the decision to go to war was preordained. And the pressure was on the analysts to come up with the right kind of report. And there's a long history of this. Under Robert Gates, when he was CIA director, actually when he was CIA director of intelligence, head of the analysts, basically they cooked the books on Russia to show that Russia was a much bigger threat than it really was. And so, you know, when the real heavy pressure comes down from politicians on the senior guys at CIA who are themselves very politically inclined in terms of their careers and everything, very often they fold. But sometimes the analysts say, no, I mean, this is going too far. And after getting blamed for Iraq, the CIA analysts are a little bit more defensive now and are not going to roll over quite as easily.
Well, and you know, here's the thing, though, too, is that when the NIE of 2007 came out, they compromised in there. And they said, yeah, there was a nuclear weapons program up until 2003. But at least as far as all the journalism that I've ever heard of on the issue, that conclusion was based on the forged laptop.
Yeah.
It never really existed, that there never was a nuclear weapons program of any description. The forged documents of the so-called smoking laptop, the alleged studies, are about a bench-level experiment at a place that hadn't even been built to do laser enrichment to tetrafluoride, something that's not good enough to use in a centrifuge anyway. It's got to be hexafluoride gas. And, you know, it was here's, you know, supposedly plans for an implosion device and documenting work on some kind of implosion device. But, you know, Dr. Gordon Prather, he laughed at that and said, you know, and I think the conclusion even in the Washington Post, wasn't it, that, well, maybe this stuff isn't even all that legit anyway.
Yeah, certainly that was true in retrospect. But at the time, it wasn't really completely clear that the documents on that laptop were, you know, as flimsy as they subsequently appear to be. And also, of course, there was a possibility that some of that stuff was forged. It could have been forged by the Israelis or by the U.S. And so, but the fact was, even at that time, it was clear to the analysts that there was no nuclear weapons program. Of course, none of us have actually seen the full text of the full NIE of December 2007 on Iran.
Right.
It was 90 pages or something like that, and we've only seen a redacted version, which actually comes to about 2 pages. And so exactly what the analysts said and how they said it, we don't really know. But the fact is they were confident in their conclusion that if Iran did indeed have a nuclear weapons program, it had ended in 2003, and that as of the end of 2007, no steps had been taken to reconstitute it. So, you know, it was a pretty definitive statement. I mean, they waffled then a little bit and said, well, you know, but we don't really know what their intentions are, and they could possibly start up a program again. But that was as far as they went. And obviously the criticism from the neocons was that basically they don't trust the Iranians. They believe that there's a hidden program and that they want a pretext for going to war if that indeed is what comes about.
Now, the new article at antiwar.com is the Iran Report. It's original.antiwar.com/Giraldi. And you break into first person here in paragraph 3, and you say, I have been advised that the new Iran NIE, which is still being negotiated, will likely reflect a compromise, giving everyone what they want. Can you give us the, you know, whatever level of description of who your sources are on this?
Yeah, I'll tell you generally what my source is. My source is someone who is very well plugged into both the Pentagon and CIA, and he basically has been extremely reliable on providing this kind of information in the past. And he said that essentially the document is going to lean towards the suspicions, saying essentially that the suspicions that Iran might be doing this or doing that are going to be emphasized, and essentially they're going to be able to say, well, you know, we can go either way.
Hold it there. I'm sorry, Phil. We got to take this break here.
Sure. Okay.
Wilton. We'll be right back. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the show. It's Anti-War Radio. I'm Scott Horton. I'm talking with Phil Giraldi. He's the CIA covert operative who infiltrated Antiwar.com. Original.antiwar.com/Giraldi. And we're talking about the new Iran NIE, and we're up against that hard break. Phil, you were saying that you have a source inside or someone who's very close to people in the Pentagon and CIA who says that this new NIE is not going to be a relief like the NIE of 2007 that basically, let some pressure toward war off and gave us a little bit of breathing room here. This one is going to lean much more toward the 2007 one was wrong. They really do mean to make nuclear weapons, those dastardly Iranians.
Yeah, as I said just before the commercial break, it's going to emphasize the suspicions. It's not going to come out and say that Iran has a nuclear program because it doesn't have evidence to say that. And it's in fact going to say that there is no evidence. But at the same time, it's going to say that the fact that Iran has, for example, not fully cooperated with the UN, which is probably true, but, kind of debatable in terms of the UN inspectors. They're going to say because of these red flags, there's a strong suspicion that Iran does indeed have the intention of creating a nuclear weapon and does have shall we say, a basic nuclear weapons program in place with a breakout capability. Now, this breakout capability is something that's important because it's something that's been emphasized by the Israelis and the U.S. for the last couple of years. What it means is that Iran is not to be allowed to even have the technologies in place to, at some point, decide to develop a nuclear weapon and then be able to develop it relatively rapidly. So that's become the issue. So, what it basically is, it's a shifting of the issue, and it's a shifting in terms of what Iran has to prove to demonstrate that it's innocent of the charges.
Right. Yeah, well, and of course, breakout capability is one of those terms like assault weapon. It used to just mean fully automatic rifle. That's what assault weapon meant. But then it came to mean, whichever scary looking gun frightened some Democrat in the Congress, and that's an assault weapon. And it's sort of the same thing with breakout capability. They say, well, if they have enough uranium enriched to 3.6%, then that could be turned into 90%, whatever. But why not go ahead and say, well, they have enough uranium in the ground to enrich up to weapons grade, which means they're in a constant state of breakout capability. It's still just setting the goalposts wherever you want.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's one of these arguments like when did you stop beating your wife? The Iranians have to prove, and essentially you can set this breakout wherever you want. There is kind of a generally accepted definition of breakout, which is the sense that you have enough of a technology base and enough of access to uranium and enough of a knowledge base to be able to move towards a weapon. But there are a whole load of countries right there in the Middle East that have this capability. Saudi Arabia has it. So does probably Kuwait. So does Egypt. And probably other countries that if they wanted to move in that direction, they could. So this whole argument is kind of bogus. It's basically making an argument that Iran shall have no nuclear capability whatsoever, that is independent of outside sources of uranium or constant and total inspection. So it's a standard that Iran is being held to that nobody else is held to, and most particularly that Israel has never been held to. And, of course, Israel's arsenal is probably the reason why, if Iran ever develops a nuclear weapon, why it would do so.
Yeah, well, and according to Daniel Ellsberg, Mordecai Vanunu told him that they have more than 600 nuclear weapons, including hydrogen bombs, and the submarines to deliver them on second strike capability and all that, too. That's
right. The Germans provided them with the submarines, and there have been reports that at least one of those subs went through the Suez Canal and is stationed somewhere off the coast of Iran.
All right. Well, and, when you talk about in a way, it's arguable that the Iranians are in defiance of the United Nations in a way to cause suspicions. That still is not based on the Safeguards Agreement, the deal that they made under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's just a bunch of separate, ad hoc, completely illegitimate UN resolutions pushed by John Bolton and Condoleezza Rice that say that they have to answer an endless list of questions about their wife beating. They have to allow inspections of everybody's palace and everything else like they did to Saddam